I was on a conference call, Zoom last night with one of our teams, but not UCLA, one of my club teams. And I didn't kind of as coaches and stuff, giving our players stuff to do when they go, when they're at home and in this situation. I don't think I took into consideration oh, go on a run. Okay, here's part of your training packet. Go on a 2-mile run or whatever, the packet is. And some of the kids that come back and say, I'm not allowed to, and we have to kind of take that into consideration, as coaches. And I didn't tell anybody to go and run. I'm a goalkeeper. But but when they came back and said, my parents won't let me run. And I'm we have to take that into consideration. I was just thinking about that when you said homework and stuff.
Well, that's the thing, and we're talking about some young kids here as well. Yes, I coach senior goalkeepers and first team goalkeepers and international goalkeepers, but we also coach some young kids.
Yeah.
And the parental aspect of it comes into play. I've got a young son, 13 years of age. I wouldn't be telling him to go out for a run.
Yeah, exactly.
by himself, so you got to find something else to keep his attention and keep him interested in what you're wanting him to learn. If it's some video work, if it's some word association, anything at all that you can keep him switched on.
Yeah.
But as I say, the main thing is just everyone being safe and not worrying at this point in time about being ultra fit and sharp.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, my fitness level is not what it was a few weeks back. Although
Michael said I didn't have to get ultra fit. So.
My touch is better though, because I'm staying right now in Palm Desert at my dad's place in Palm Desert, mainly because LA is literally Mad Max right now, and I'm just kind of you know what, I'm good. I can stay. See, but you're hidden in a shelter, so no one knows where you are exactly. So
yeah. Kind of.
but people, I've been out there and I've been doing my little touch and individual workouts and all that sort of stuff. And guys, again, we can't stress this enough. Don't use the fact that you have restrictive space as an excuse for not doing something productive. Okay. If you're just sitting around and you're just watching TV, once we come back from all this madness, you're going to be in a much more detrimental position than everybody else who's actually putting some work in. Even if it's just listening to this podcast and conversing with us, just trying to do something every day. My theory is if you're doing something positive every day that's engaging your mind, you're going to be healthier, engaging your body, you're going to be mentally sharper, and honestly, then you're going to be able to play at the Northern Ireland Goalkeeping Institute, and that's the only way it's going to happen, guys. Otherwise, you have no chance.
I love it.
All right, let's get into today's topic real quickly here, and I'm actually going to flip it back and forth right here. I want to start with working with large groups of goalkeepers. I want to keep it on the educational tip first before we get into Northern Ireland specifically, because there's a lot of great videos there from Northern Ireland that we're seeing, and they're literally just from your Goalkeeping Institute. No, I'm kidding. There's good stuff from everybody, and a lot of goalkeeper coaches have this issue where they've got a lot of goalkeepers in a limited amount of space or a limited amount of time, and they don't know how to handle it. So let's start this out. First off, Michael, what is considered a large group of goalkeepers?
Well, I think most people are comfortable with groups of 2, 4, 6. Once it gets above 6, most coaches that I know anyway struggle. Yes, they can put on a session, but it's very difficult to coach a session. And for me, I've learned through experience and through time of adapting to larger numbers. It's something that we base all our time around it, because we have big numbers at the Institute, and I want to make sure that these guys get as much hands-on from me and as much time management and as much contact time with the ball and with each other as possible. And I don't feel if you go back to the old school of everybody lining up or queuing up to take a volley off a coach, which might not be a particularly good one, and then waiting 5, 6, 7, 8 reps before they feel the ball again. I don't feel that's the right way to go, but it's how you structure that and how you manage it. And again, it's just for me, it came through experience and through making a lot of mistakes, and trying to learn from those mistakes and how to fix them for the benefit of the goalkeepers.
Yeah, I think, one thing I think that's really cool about, by the way, I was really hoping that you said we have large groups of goalkeepers just so that we can do really cool drone shots at the Institute. I was really hoping that was the reason you had large
No,
groups.
because it cost me too much money to do that, so we've stopped doing it.
Those are awesome though, man. But I love what you're saying about the touches. And Saskia and I, we've actually discussed this quite a bit, is that you've got to make sure that when you have large groups that they're getting consistent reps and they're not just sitting around, right, Sas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously there's an age situation here. Like, when you get, especially with the younger kids, number one, you have to keep them engaged and stuff. And I agree with you, Michael, so much that having them stand in line with 7 kids, 10 kids in a line and getting a rep from a coach, because we all know that they can't serve each other that well.
Yep.
Right. So we want to get a quality service in. The way, like, I don't like going to that many in a group. Have I? Yeah, I've had to. But with the younger kids, I really don't like to. But when I do, I make sure that, if I'm doing the reps with them, they're not waiting in line. There's some sort of a circuit set up that they're working through. But again, too many kids in a group, this is the prime time to be coaching them, and you need to be watching them. And so I don't like going above with that age group 6, either 7, maybe.
And what age group are you referring to, Saskia?
Like, I would say, well, my younger kids, like my 8, 10, 12-year-olds, and then getting
very
up.
difficult.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult. And, because you want to have quality time with them. And if you have too many in a group, you're just hitting volleys and not getting the coach, and they're standing around. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, you're losing them a little bit. And one of the things that I picked up on from someone, I can't remember who it was, but working with that age group, their attention span's obviously not as good or not as long. And what he said, if you're having them for an extended amount of time, and it's a large group at that young age of 8, 9, 10, 11, he said make it more game related.
Yeah.
Now, my first thought was thinking about the game, and he said no, make it more fun in games. So come up with little ideas that, and he threw a few things in, like putting coloured cones around and calling out teams that reference that colour cone. Manchester United, and they had the ball on their hands and they were diving towards the red cone, or they were diving towards the blue cone for Italy, or there was lots of different examples. But when you came down to their level, you held their attention for much longer, and then the service element wasn't a problem because they were working with each other.
Right.
They were getting lots and lots of touches of the ball with their hands and feet, and the main thing is they enjoyed it and they wanted to come back.
Right. Yeah. Keeping them engaged is, if you can't, you got 2 little boys tackling each other in the corner because they're bored in line. I've seen it. But then I think once we start getting up to like the upper age groups and stuff, at this point, these guys should be able, to serve volleys to each other. Like, you can engage them with them helping train each other as well. And so, and with quality services. And so it becomes more functional that way. So I feel it becomes a bit easier to coach a bigger group, but ideally, I like small groups.
I mean, look, we all never want to have too big a group, because it's going to make it very difficult to manipulate the space in order to really make it game realistic for us. One of the biggest mistakes I see a lot of goalkeepers make when goalkeeper coaches make when they have a big group at an older age is I see them trying to make it all about the game, but it's not actually simulating the game. And I don't know if you guys know what I mean by that, but I mean, as in, like, you're trying to make game situations, yet the service isn't crisp, or it's an artificial touch, or the player knows where that ball's going. There's no sense of
game speed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you need to
it's
be
more like a shadow
of that.
play. Yeah, it's more like a
Yes.
shadow play, like when you're working with your back four and you're working on shape or
Yeah,
some
yeah.
sort of positional sense, and everything's very slow and everything, as you say, is very methodical, and the goalkeeper knows what's happening early. But I think one of the things that I've found more beneficial, and listen, it's easier for me because you're working with large groups of really good quality,
Right.
and that makes it easy for the coach. And most days they all have their moments, but when you put on a game related scenario that Michael mentioned there, and when we say it's live, it's live.
Right.
So it's not scripted. Yes, we'll give them maybe the starting point and the end point. It starts with the goalkeeper playing out from the back. It breaks down somewhere at some point, and it finishes with a cross, finishes with a shot, finishes with recovery, save, whatever. But that's up to those guys to see it, how they see it at that point in time,
Yeah.
and to play it that way.
Yeah.
And I just think that keeps them engaged.
Absolutely.
You brought up a really good point, and I want to shout out something that Tim Dittmer, a friend of the show, said, is that you need to make sure that they're varying the service, because if they're giving the same consistent service over and over again, it is going to get into that methodical type of play. So I love your, I love your engagement of, now it's live. Okay, now you change. Now that service is now whatever you want to do. It's free flow. What would you do in a game? I always tell keepers whenever something happens in a session, and they go, "Yeah, but that's not what we were working on." I go, "Okay, but we're not in a training session. You understand?
Yeah.
Training is for the game. What would you do in a game in that situation? Well, I would have done blah blah blah. Then why didn't you do that?" It's like, "That's not what you're working on." Like, but now you're not thinking about it in the right standpoint, because everything we're doing is for the game. So
Yeah.
I'd rather you improvise within a game rather than trying to do everything clean because that's what the coach told you to do. And I think that's when we create these thinking goalkeepers rather than these goalkeepers that are just looking for the coach for the answers.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said improvise, because ultimately you want the goalkeeper to make saves in a game. You want him to keep the ball out of the net. Yes, as a coach, we want that to look technically perfect all the time, and that because that's our job and that's what we're judged on. But the manager or the head coach or the supporters don't really care how the goalkeeper makes the save. So sometimes in training, when it happens like that, and it's a totally unrealistic technique that they're using, sometimes you just have to let that go, because
Oh, I totally agree. I look at my goalkeeper and I'll say, look, number one thing, priority, keep the ball in the net. Okay? I'll break it down with you later technically and tell you, that, it was some crazy thing, you saved it off your elbow, but you kept the ball out of the net, and we can build from there. And so I agree with you, like, that you got to let that go sometimes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hold on, breaking news. Go
ahead,
Michael. Yeah, no, I was going to say breaking news right here from Peter Hobson on the comment board right now. Can you give my son Smicker a big shout out, as he's a big keeper?
What's up?
What's up, Smicker?
Peter Hobson actually spent some time at Clemson with me, so he knows I'm on the show, and that's why he's
okay. Yeah, I'm smart, and I do not tell my friends doing this, because I can't even imagine the weird comments.
Well, as soon as you mentioned his name there was a little bit of nervousness crept over me. So, cheers,
boy.
Pete. I was just going to say about working. Another thing about working with a large group, and again, because it's a good quality group, is they learn off each other. I think that especially my group, they learn off each other a lot more than they learn off me.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that is, we just go back to they're all different goalkeepers, different sizes, have different attributes. One of them will make a save or move his feet or attack the ball in a certain way that works for him, and that's great. It may not work for the other goalkeepers.
Right.
For instance, I use the scoop technique. A lot of goalkeepers now are just spreading their legs wide and just stopping the ball with their hands, where we used to be told drop into the K shape, second barrier, all this. And some of my goalkeepers completely just kick their legs out of the ground and just let the ball hit them in the midriff. And there's all these different styles. If it doesn't work for someone, or if someone's being coached in a certain way, i.e. the K shape, and it's not working, and he's giving up rebounds, or continually balls are bouncing off him, it's at that point as a coach where I can say, well, look at this other goalkeeper, look at his technique of how he succeeds, and
Right.
try it. If it works for you, take it on board. If it doesn't, we'll find something else.
No,
And that's
absolutely.
the biggest thing for me as a group, is learning together.
I love what you brought up right there, Michael, because that's a big mistake that a lot of young goalkeeper coaches make, is they try to pigeonhole their goalkeepers to play like them. Well, their physical attributes might be completely different than who they are. If I trained my goalkeeper who's 6'6" to play like me, who's 5'9", it's not going to work.
Right.
No.
It's just not going to work. There's different attributes there. So you need to make sure. Go ahead, Sas.
It's never just one way.
No.
There are plenty of different techniques, and I agree with you, Michael. Like, there are so many. Well, you're both Michael. There's so many different techniques that I say the same thing to Mike. Let's find what works for you, and if it works for you, let's perfect it. And that's across the board with everything. That's with whether you're doing a side volley or a drop kick, or you, like, certain things. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you this is the only way you should do this and this is how it's done. Whatever works for you and is the most efficient and works best for the team and the game, let's perfect it. And that might be totally different for, XYZ.
Yeah. So I want to bring up something real quickly that just came in the comment board here. And I think this is actually a really good question here in regards to working with large groups, because this becomes very difficult. And this comes from Roberto Grosso. And he goes, what advice does Michael have for coaching and analyzing set pieces with young goalkeepers in this situation? That's a fascinating question to me. I hadn't really thought about that in regards to working with youngers and set pieces. I think there's a time and place for everything. I don't know if large groups is really the best place to do that. I think you should more incorporate that with the team than just individually with the goalkeepers. How do you feel, Michael?
Sometimes it needs to be done. And again, the question is, how young are we talking here? So I think it gets to a certain age where they need to learn the tactical element of the game as well as the technical. If I was working on set pieces with a large group of goalkeepers, lots of ways you can implement that. One of the biggest problems I think that young goalkeepers have when we're talking about set pieces is, first of all, they don't know how to set up a wall or why they're even setting up the wall.
Exactly.
They don't know them where to stand after the wall's set up. So we've come up with a little routine, and we phase this the whole way through to the senior goalkeepers. So regardless of where the ball is, this is for open play as well, but at the minute set pieces, wherever the ball is, the first question they've got to ask themselves is, can he or she beat me from there? Can they score from there? If it was a free shot, more often than not, we're talking 35, 40 yards from the angle or very deep in the pitch. So the answer is more often than not going to be no, they can't. Okay, the second question we ask them is, so if they can't beat you, why, number one, are you standing on your goal line as if the ball's 15, 18 yards out? Number two, where's the danger in this position? So we get them to come up with the answers. And again, this is even with young kids, and more of them are getting it. So they'll tell you, well, the danger area is here. It's between the penalty spot and the edge of the D. Okay. So where are you going to now set your back four up? Where are you, do you need a wall? Initially, they said they want this 3 in a wall. The ball's 45 yards out on the angle. They don't need 3. So it's continually just, and if you have a large group, I think if you're talking to them, coaching them in this way and asking them questions as a group and individuals, you can coach that without actually physically having to whip set pieces in, because you don't have the service. You don't want the contact, especially with young goalkeepers. So I think you can, a little bit like a Subbuteo table or a little tabletop football, where you can place the players where you want them or where you think they should be, but they come up with the answers, not you.
I love what you're saying in regards to that. That brings out another thing that Tim was saying. He's like, a lot of goalkeeper coaches out there, they don't allow their goalkeepers to have that line of communication where they're problem solving and thinking for themselves and answering questions. It's something I try to pride myself on, and I keep trying to work on it to become a better goalkeeper coach, is allow more of an interaction within the session with my goalkeepers, so they're not just following orders or just listening to a lecture, but there's actually an open dialogue going on.
Well, I think the key thing, and Michael, you said it, Michael's.
I know. Should I go by like M squared or something like that, and then like
no
MDM squared?
Right. Is they have to understand why. why they're doing what they're doing. It's not, sometimes you get with a team and they're like, okay, 2 people in the wall here, 3 people in the wall here, 4 people in the wall here, 4 people, and that's how they deal with set pieces. Why? And I agree with you, and that's what I do with my goalkeepers as well. Like they have to be able to solve those problems and understand why they're doing it and where they're supposed to be and for what reason, not just because somebody told you when the ball's over there, you put 4 people in the wall.
Yeah. And I think another thing too is that you need to understand, and Nathan Thackeray, from North Carolina Courage, he brings this up. He says you need to understand the demands of the game. And by that, I mean, whatever age group you're coaching at, what are the demands of that age group? Michael, I love what you said in regards to positioning based on reality. Right. Can they score from there? If you're talking about a U9s, U10s, no. They can't score from there. They don't have the strength to score from there. So you need to understand what are the demands of that age group that you're coaching at, and then allow them the tactical tools for that game that they play.
Right.
Yeah.
Listen, 100%. But I know we're talking about younger goalkeepers, but I think even with senior goalkeepers, especially in an environment where it's physical and there's a lot of maybe aerial balls, and you want your goalkeeper to come and command those and take charge, a lot of senior goalkeepers don't do it. They want to be, if we look at a Lloris, his strength is to play on the goal line and make saves. Can he still be coached? I don't know, as he said in his ways. But if we talk of a 19, 20, 21-year-old, rather than, and that's maybe their style at this point in time, rather than just let them play and train to their strengths, can we change that? Can we continue to coach that?
You can. And like just being with UCLA and everything, and that's the age group that I have, and these are the top goalkeepers in the country, at the top university in the country. So, but they're coming from their high schools and stuff and their clubs where they didn't get that kind of coaching, where they're doing what they've always been doing. And I think that they are certain ones. I think they are open to, as long as it's explained and they understand, again, the situation, why you need to be off your line more in this situation, why you need to hold your line more, why, you come for that cross, you don't come for that cross, like positionally. They will understand. I think it can be changed at that age. I mean, it's different, I would say, for a 20-year-old that's playing pro already, maybe they're set in their ways. I mean, I'm dealing with college kids. But I think it can be trained.
Well, I think one of the difficult things that you have, going on, Saskia, is that you have pretty much almost every kid that comes to you is at worst is an all-state player. I mean, you're talking about pretty much they've been told.
Or on like the U20 national team.
Exactly, yeah. So, I mean, the majority of let's be honest, most of the recruits that you get are youth national team keepers. So they've been told how fantastic they are their entire lives.
Exactly.
And because a lot of coaches, they don't want to, ruffle any feathers, they just keep letting them go through their motions and letting them get away with a lot of stuff. And then once they get to your level, a lot of them, they've never competed to be a number one before. They've been a number one their entire lives.
That's right. I mean, you look at our goalkeepers and like the number one is a number one, the number two, number three could start at another university. So, or start on a pro team if they didn't come to college. So, but I think you'd be surprised at how open they are for the coaching, because now that they're all challenging for that starting position, now that they're all at this elite level, where before, that was like they were so high above any other goalkeeper in their area or something like that, they realize that they're going to have to change things in order to go to the next level, in order to win a national championship, in order to play pro, in order to make the full national team. And so they are open to understanding what will set them apart, because they all come in and they're all kind of like,
yeah.
Well, not really, but.
I love it. Like, you're like, yeah, maybe. We're not gonna name any names. So let's talk a little bit, getting back to the kind of the large group settings. There's a question here from Bobby Edwards, who I believe you're familiar with, Michael.
Just a little bit.
Bobby sounds like Sir Bobby Edwards. Like, he has to have the Sir at the front. I'm so sorry. He sounds like if I was like watching like old tapes from like the 50s or something like that, they'd be like, you know, he
Sir
backstopped Sir
Robert.
Bobby Edwards. Yeah, he backstopped so and so back in '54. So he goes, Michael, how do you ensure that in large groups that all the keepers are staying involved with quality reps, not waiting around for their turn to work? Because there's one thing about getting reps and staying engaged. It's another thing making sure they're quality reps. And I think that's a huge mistake a lot of people make when they're training large groups of goalkeepers, is they think, oh, as long as I'm keeping them active, as long as they're getting reps, that it's good. It's not.
No, for me, and again, over time and experience, I've learned that it sort of came into my play later in my career as a goalkeeper, that you're not able to do all the extra reps anymore. And you just want, rather than 10 reps, you just want 4 quality reps.
Right.
And that's you done. And when you think about that, the quality over quantity, why should that just be for senior goalkeepers who physically aren't up to doing all the reps anymore? So we kind of brought that into play of quality over quantity in everything we do. There's a huge demand within my group on service. Huge demand on service. I refuse to serve with this group because it's the only way they're going to learn. And I don't think they're going to benefit if I step in and serve 100 volleys a session.
These are the older boys.
Yep. So
Okay.
17 to 19s.
Yeah.
Because we're talking about kids who have an opportunity to go into the pro game very soon, or go to college, or go to a level that they're going to be working with other goalkeepers. Probably one of them's going to be a senior pro, and he's going to demand good service, and they should demand good service back again. So getting back to Bobby's question, it's how we kind of structure our sessions if we're working with 6 or 8 goalkeepers is everyone's involved, and everyone's involved on service or either dealing with reps. A lot of the setups you've seen, we work with 2 goals, and we have like a mirrored session going on at the same time. So 2 goalkeepers working both on a goal each, 2 on the outside serving, 2 on the inside serving. And the servers will be implementing different service. So when we rotate, everybody has completed the same amount of reps, and everybody has completed the same amounts of different service.
Right.
So whether it's a throw, whether it's a half volley, whether it's a little dipper dipped in, whatever it is, and we try to record that as best we can into how the goalkeepers are dealing with the service, and actually how many are making unforced errors, both in their handling and both on the service.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point that you're making there in regards to making sure that it's an even amount of service from the different types, so that everybody's getting the same session. A lot of times what happens is one goalkeeper might work more than another goalkeeper if you're not keeping track and you're not doing it right. And also making sure that it's not the same service over and over again for each type of keeper. One mistake I think a lot of times young goalkeeper coaches make is they go, oh, well, all these goalkeepers are at a different level of ability, so I'm going to make this easy on myself, and I'm just going to keep the same service because I know all these kids can handle this type of service. But that's a detriment to the higher, more advanced level goalkeepers in that session, right?
It's both a detriment and it stops the learning environment. I mean, if somebody's not good at something, how do you get better? So I don't expect these kids on day 1 or week 1 to be unbelievable in all aspects of their training game or their service, as we're talking about. Over time, we want to build up their strong foot, make sure it's 99% of the time it's going where it's supposed to go. But again, we go back to an earlier question. We're working on, okay, we've told the goalkeepers the first serve's a half volley and it's going to be in the in this little satellite dish area for you to deal with, and the first serve is a bad one and it goes past the goalkeeper half a yard or a yard outside this so-called satellite dish. The goalkeeper doesn't go for it. It happens all the time.
Oh yeah.
And they'll say, oh no, start again. But why?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a bad serve. Yeah, but it's only a yard away from you. Just go and make the save.
Yeah, just because we told you that we want the service in this bubble.
Exactly.
Yep.
The bubble doesn't mean you don't. I mean, it's one thing if it shanks and it goes over top goal, but yeah, why? Why are you going for that? don't.
Well, if you miss the target 3 times in a row,
Yeah.
and this is implemented in our groups. I try not to put these videos on for obvious reasons, but if you miss the target 3 times in a row on service, all the other goalkeepers in the session take off their gloves and give you glove slaps across the face.
What? Really?
Yeah, that might work to live in Ireland. I'm pretty sure I can't get away with that in the Palisades.
This was introduced to me by Brian Jensen, who played for Burnley in the Premier League, Danish international, very close to Peter and Kasper Schmeichel. So Brian Jensen came across. I brought him across to Northern Ireland. I think he was 39, 40, and he came and played in the Premier League at the end of his career. Myself and Brian had met on one of our coaching courses and just completely hit it off. And he told me about this, and he said it got that bad at Burnley when he was there, where they had a pair of size 11 gloves that sat in a bucket of water beside the goal. So that was their forfeit. If you missed the target 3 times, the big size 11 wet gloves came out, and you got slapped in the face with these. Thankfully, we haven't went to that. It was extreme.
I'm scared that 72,000 people right now are going to start doing that with their youth keepers after listening to this podcast.
We do not recommend
it's a senior goalkeeper. Senior goalkeepers only. Adults only, please.
Adults only.
And it's a bit like I see the outfield players doing it, and they do their little ear flicks and things like this, and it's just something like that. It's obviously not meant to hurt anyone. It's meant a little fluff around the face, and you get on with it, and it kind of kills that mood of everyone being annoyed, or somebody being annoyed that he didn't get the right service, or somebody being annoyed they didn't give the right service. Cut, start again, a few glove slaps, clear the heads, back on it.
So I have a question for both of you guys here, and that is, what we're talking about a lot of times when you get a large group of goalkeepers and they're all of different skill levels and skill sets, maybe different age ranges, that sort of a thing. A lot of goalkeeper coaches, they make the mistake of trying to make things game related, game realistic, but all these goalkeepers are of varying levels. So a lot of times the session doesn't really replicate the game. What advice do you both give goalkeeper coaches in this situation?
I'll jump on with that one first. I think this comes into play a lot if you're doing a camp, for instance, and you've got large groups of goalkeepers, mixed age, mixed ability. I know last year in Canada I done one, and we had something like 60 something goalkeepers. And the last day I said, okay, I'm going to take everyone together. All the coaches were delighted, but also looking at me to say, how are you going to coach 60 goalkeepers? So what we did was we've done a kind of a warm up, but it progressed into hands, feet.
Wait, hold on. Did you say 60 goalkeepers?
Yes, you did.
62 or 64, whatever it was. But what we did was we split them up kind of age appropriate, first of all, into 3s and 4s. So while everyone was given the same topic and the same drill to do, obviously then we can't expect 8-year-olds to be half volleying the ball. So we broke it down that they were throwing the ball. Okay. The next group up, we're volleying the ball straight. The next group up, we're half volleys. Maybe the next group up, we're overarm throw with a little bit of pace on it. So we kind of just learn as we go the levels of goalkeepers, pretty much mixed with the age of goalkeepers, of how we can still run the same session and change it up via the service.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting thing you just said right there. And I'm trying to think of another word to use other than interesting, but my brain completely freezed at that moment, because I was like, there's got to be a better.
Hopefully beneficial.
Yeah, beneficial. There you go. Beneficial as opposed to interesting. I literally, people might have been like watching this right now and they just thought like, oh, this thing just froze. Like, no, that was me freezing. That was me freezing.
That was you.
That was me freezing, trying to think of another word right there. By the way, somebody actually just reached out from Canada, and they were saying that they said they had an opportunity. Oh, that was Roberto. He said he had the opportunity to work alongside Michael last summer in Montreal. So was this the Canadian camp you were talking about?
Yeah, Roberto works for a company, Clean Sheet International, top class goalkeeping organization, and they have over 100 kids come in, and again, all different levels, all different ages, male, female. They work with club goalkeepers, and Roberto's a great guy. He's always wanting to learn. Almost sometimes I think he feels embarrassed by asking questions, almost apologetic. But the best way to learn is to ask questions as much as you can. If someone doesn't want to help you, they'll tell you pretty quickly. And I can't get enough of people like that who want to tap into what I know, because I'm doing the same with other goalkeeping coaches around them. I'm, constantly asking them questions, sending them text messages, videos to look over. So don't just think that, at top of the chain. These guys learn from me. I learn from other people. So I think that's how it works.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Phil Whedon said it best to me once. He says, always keep learning. If you're not learning, you're not doing your job. You're finished.
You're finished. For me, you're finished. If you're not learning, you're done.
I'm constantly learning new things, and like everything's evolving. Like my style, like even at this age, which we won't bring up, my style and everything like that, and the game, and I have to with the game as well. I can't train goalkeepers the same way I was trained with some stuff. I think we had a conversation about that, Michael M. From the convention, that some comments were made about some, I'll keep names out of it. Some comments were made about some of the tutorials that went on, and how the person that was giving them hadn't evolved. That, the drills they were doing were kind of archaic. And so as a goalkeeper coach, you have to keep growing. I mean, I steal stuff from everybody.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to just say simply, like Michael's thing about the countries with the younger boys. I mean, I'm stealing that. That's awesome. I can't think of a better way to.
Trust me.
I mean, I was like, oh, I'm making a note about that, because that is such a cool way to keep those kids invested and excited about it, and make it a game and make it fun for them. Especially like at sometimes the rec level, sometimes my academy, people reach out and they do contracts with different clubs and stuff, and they have these rec programs there, or these goalkeepers aren't competitive goalkeepers, and I'm getting thrown a big mix of them, and I got to find ways to keep them engaged at the same time as still learning. So I love when I learn little things like that. So Michael, if you can just send me an entire PowerPoint on that, that would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Michael, just all your sessions, and Michael will just redo them here.
We'll just put them all on a Dropbox.
Yeah.
I think when you go back to the little game element of it, I think it's important to replicate the types of games that they play. I know, a lot of these games have passed the test of time, and they all have different names in different countries. But we used to pretend to be soldiers when we were kids, and you were throwing pretend grenades, just when kids really use their imagination. And we kind of try to feed into what the kids are interested in, and what kind of games they're playing around the school playground, in the park with each other. And if you can tap into that and then relate something with a ball, something that involves them catching the ball. One of the little ones we've done where they were diving over the river, and it was literally just 3 cones, just the little small cones. Don't touch the cones, you're going to fall in the river. The cones were blue.
I love that. Are you sure you're not like a children's author, Michael? Like,
listen, with an almost 2-year-old girl, that's why this is happening here, and a 13-year-old boy. So you have to come up with these ideas.
I want to talk about goalkeeper coach to player ratio. We've been talking about large numbers right here, and we just had Roberto on who worked with you in Montreal. In your opinion, to both of you guys, what is the best player to coach ratio to run a productive session with large numbers?
For me, the perfect 6. I love working with 6 goalkeepers. I just think it's there's so much you can do. I think when you're with, most people would have said 4. And I think that was going back a couple of years, 4 goalkeepers, 2 working, 2 resting, or 2 working, 2 serving, whatever it was. But I think when you have 6, there's so much more you can do around game-related scenarios while still getting the little rest while you're actively serving. You still got an opportunity to watch the other goalkeepers working. And it gives you just that, for me, it's that perfect amount of numbers to run a complete session.
So what you're saying is I need to change on my website for my academy. I need to change it from maximum of 4 to maximum of 6. Good. It's good. That's good to know that I need to do that. That's an extra couple bucks. Sure. Why not? Let's make it happen.
I concur. I would agree with 6, especially when you're doing some game scenarios. When you have 4 and you want them to be serving, that kind of limits those scenarios that you can put together and everything. I think 6 is a great number. I think going above that 8 would be a bit much.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want to talk about is and this is something that we're just kind of unfamiliar with in regards to some of the aspects over in Europe in regards to the academies. And, why don't you explain to some of our audience who isn't familiar with Northern Ireland, goalkeeping, what is the structure of your academy and, your relationship with the what's it called? The NIFL? Is that what it's called over there?
Yeah. NIFL.
You guys are an independent enrichment program, right?
Yeah. So basically, NIFL are the governing body of Irish League football. So they're your MLS, so to speak. Oversee all the structures of the clubs. What's the word I'm looking for here? Just basically the day-to-day running of all the clubs, fixtures, things like that, all the cup competitions. So they feed that right down from first team right through all the academy levels. Where we come into play is at school leaving age here is 16. So when you're 16, you have the opportunity to leave school or to stay on for extended education before you think about going to college. You've got a 2-year period there. And how our program works is a little bit of talent ID, and we don't necessarily I don't turn players away, especially not goalkeepers, but we pretty much talent ID the best players around the country from all the clubs. So all the Premier League clubs, all the Championship clubs, and some of the Championship 2 clubs. So your first top 3 tiers, we talent ID all the players. We then invite them to come into the program. Now that's an educational program as well as a sporting one. So when they come in the doors, they will sign up to a 2-year like a sports management program of higher education. So they'll learn their anatomy and physiology. They'll learn so many elements that will help them if they don't make it as a player.
Wait, so they're going to goalkeeping school, not just goalkeeping, but goalkeeping school.
Yep. So
why wasn't that around when why didn't I know about that when I was a kid? I want to go to that.
Tell me about it. So that's pretty much it. They've got strength and conditioning coaches. They've got tutors on board for their classes. Obviously myself for the pitch sessions with the goalkeepers. And wow. we try to replicate the environment of a professional club setup, that they come in first thing in the morning, have the breakfast, straight on the training ground. They've got, the facilities are unbelievable. We've got an independent facility. You see most of the videos are on that, the Hanwood in Belfast. So it's a brand new turf pitch. It's got a gym. It's got a cryo spa. There's a masseuse works out of there. There's a strength and conditioning suite. There's a classroom. There's a kitchen. There's an indoor. This place is ridiculous. The other venue we have is based at the National Stadium. So for the NIFL kids, especially the guys on the NIFL program, they'll actually walk in through the main doors of the National Stadium every morning to go to school.
Wow!
And they'll walk through the museum, the Heritage Centre, nice. All the pictures on the wall. Pat Jennings, George Best, everyone nice. In Northern Ireland history and folklore is on those walls. So to have that environment every day walking in is pretty special for these kids.
Yeah. Now, and they're still playing with their club teams on the weekends, right?
Yep. So they'll still train with their clubs in the evenings. So they'll train two nights a week, and they'll play their club games either a Wednesday night for the U20s or I think it's a Friday night for the U18s. Some of them are involved in first teams already. They'll play on a Saturday, and then obviously with myself, we'll work with them during the day.
Wow. That's it sounds amazing. I want to go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, Saskia and I, we were talking, and I know Omar had expressed interest as well too, for us to all go to Northern Ireland and put on a show out there at the Institute and do a clinic. So once all this madness is over, we really do have to figure out a way to make that happen, because that sounds like quite a setup you've got over there. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, absolutely. I know you just said about Omar. I spoke to him. I think it's something that other goalkeepers and other goalkeeping coaches have started to do, is contact me and ask to come in for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or even a couple of days. And again, I find that again, when these guys are with me, I'm learning from them. They're not just coming here to learn from me or learn off me. So I think it's beneficial for everyone involved. But just the environment, everyone wants to work in a first team environment. I've done it as a player and as a coach. But this is more rewarding for me. This is why I left my first team job with a Premier League club to take this job on. It's just much more hands-on. You're in control of everything, and you're working with a great group of goalkeepers.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, that's something like, if I was young again, I mean, that's something I would have loved to come and been in that environment and walk through those halls, or done that training for 2 weeks. I mean, my parents sent me to Holland to train with Franz Hoek way back when. But, I was lucky enough to have parents that did that. But we have nothing like that here in the United States.
One question we did have, because I mean, I can't think of I mean, we have summer camps. I mean, shout out to people like
I mean, we have some things set, but we have nothing with that kind of like just the full picture. Classes, physios, practice, but then like the lore of walking through that front of that stadium and seeing all of that and knowing why you're doing what you're doing, and that's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's a unique learning environment, that's for sure. You've got to be careful with these kids as well, that they don't go the other way and they're walking into the bright lights of the National Stadium thinking we've made it. And we're very fortunate that pretty much all of these kids don't think that way. The school element of it is a little bit more relaxed, that it's not like we went to school, a teacher forcing you to do the work and you weren't allowed to speak. A lot of these kids will sit with their headphones on, they'll do their work on their iPad, on their laptop, and they'll just get on with it. So it's perfect.
Now I have a question, Michael, and Saskia and I, we'd actually talked about this too, because we're unfamiliar, with the setup over there and the structure over there, as opposed to some of the bigger countries. In the women's game, how is it with the women's game? For instance, is there a women's program as well for the academy, or is it just all boys, or where's that kind of set?
With the academy, so there is a women's game here. It's improving. The last year, 18 months, it's seen massive strides of improvement. It's came under the NIFL umbrella as well. It's had a little bit of sponsorship put on board. You have to understand the game. We're a very small country, so we don't have the big pool of players that the United States have or England has. So, that's more difficult when you look at the women's section. Regarding the academy and goalkeepers, we've had one female who's came through the academy, a young girl called Lauren Perry, who is now at Blackburn Rovers.
Nice.
She's 19. She's also a senior international with Northern Ireland. So there's opportunities for women. It's becoming bigger and bigger, a lot like it is in the States, and it was in the States way before this time. Women's soccer in the States has always been a big thing, I think, for me. Going back to the time I was at Clemson, we watched the Women's World Cup in the US. So it can still improve, of course, but there are excellent coaches involved, and people are trying their best to improve it. We're looking at, and we're very, very keen on having a women's only NIGK section, and I would be very, very keen on that. I know I've had some interest from some Canadian females that were interested in coming in, and ideally we have 4, 5, 6 local kids, local females come onto the program as well.
Yeah, it's a small country, but you're building it, and the resources are there, and as long as the investment is there, it'll grow. We've always been big, and we've always had a lot of support behind the women's soccer here, but teams that are really good now used to be non-existent when I played. Like, we never even worried about playing England, really. I mean, we did and we didn't. Like, no offense. Kelly Smith, they were amazing. But those weren't the big teams. Like, you were laughing earlier saying, oh, Norway. oh, Sweden, like those were back in '99, China, like back and stuff like that, and the other countries caught on and they started building and they started investing, and no matter how big or small the countries. And now look, Japan wins the World Cup. Look who are contenders and stuff. Like there are other teams from all over. So I think, as long as you guys have the setup that you have and are investing in it, it'll grow. Plus, you have the Women's Premier League in England. And so now there's something to shoot for as well, where before there was none of that. Well, okay, I'm playing, I'm training. Either I play for my national team and that's about it, or I go overseas, and how many people get to do that? But now with so many professional women's leagues, you'll find that it'll grow fast because it's an option now.
Well, I'm sure, in Northern Ireland, one of the goals for a lot of the young women there is to come to university in the United States. I mean, that's probably one of their top goals, to do that. So,
I played pro with an Irish woman in Japan, Claire Scanlon.
Hmm.
Yep. So I just wanted you to know it's been around.
Absolutely. That's always been a thing, not just for female players, but for young Irish and Northern Irish male players. Was certainly I was one of them who wanted to go to college in the States and play college football. I was, as I say, went to Clemson for a bit, a very short time, but was left then with the question of, did you want to go back to school or did you want to play first team? I was on the verge of first team football at a very young age. I'd already played at 16, made my debut in the first team. But back then, certainly from this country, education wasn't the first and foremost thing on your mind. It was just playing football.
So I think the difference with that, with the women on the women's side, is by the time you are 18, 19 on the men's side, like you're being identified, you're being pulled up.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. On the women's side, you can go to college and then go pro afterwards, and that education as well as the college game will also, depending on where you go and what level, will also get you ready for that level.
So Peter has a question for both you guys right here, and he wants to know how many teams you both have played for and what your first gloves were. And I'm gonna leave myself out of that conversation because you guys are the big timers here. So
pro teams.
Oh, I'll need about 20 minutes to count up the amount of teams that I've played for.
Oh my God!
Tiger Woods, more clubs than Tiger Woods springs to mind.
Oh my gosh! Okay, well, maybe some of the top clubs then. How about that? Let's do the top clubs for both you guys.
3 clubs.
Okay.
First club would be Oki FC in Japan. The next one would have been the Philadelphia Charge, and then New York Power.
Yeah.
So,
I love those early 2000s names for American squads. It's like we all had to. Power, Charge,
and your first
Explosion.
My first gloves? Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, my first gloves when I was really, really little were those little red ones with the black rubber on it and stuff like that, or the other way around. Yeah. Honestly, I think Royce were my first gloves.
Okay.
Would be Roy. I think. I could be wrong. I'd have to ask my mom and dad that one. They probably still have them. Somewhere. Okay. I don't have them.
Well, I grew up. Yeah. I grew up supporting the club, the grey jersey, Glentoran, who are one of the big two in Northern Ireland in the Premier League. You had Glentoran and you had Linfield. You still do. I think I went. My 2 grandfathers used to take me to the games. So from the age of 4, they started taking me to the games, home and away. Some of the European games. It was just embedded in you that you were a Glentoran supporter. I had one of the first team players who lived 2 doors up, and seeing him every day was just like seeing God coming out of out of his front door. And then it was very, very fortunate. 10 years later, 14, to actually sign for the club. So I progressed through the academy at youth level at Glentoran, and then I eventually made it back there to play in the first team again 10 years later, 24. So in between that, I had to go away and do the dirty work, as it's called, which included some Premier League clubs and some Championship clubs, which is technically the first division. So just strange how football, brings up these stories. Support a club, it takes you. You've been there 10 years as a supporter, and 10 years after leaving the club, you then go back and play for the first team. But very, very privileged to have done that and play for that club.
Yeah.
What about your first glove?
First glove, I'm trying to think. I think it was a Ull Sport, white with a little black
Oh my God.
checkers on it, like a little, you know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
Alice in Wonderland floor type design.
I
I think is that the best way to describe it?
I remember the color. Mine were yellow. They were white with yellow and blue.
Yeah. So I think I had the black and white ones.
Yeah.
But listen, I always played outfield at school. Even though when you went to the park with your friends, everyone took their turn in goals and I always wanted to be a goalkeeper. But at school, I always played as a centre forward, like most goalkeepers think they can play out. And at Glentoran, a friend of mine, one of my friends, Andy Kirk, whose dad was the manager of the team. Both Andy and his dad went on the huge things in the game. But I asked them what they were doing that evening, and they said, "Oh, they had training with Glentoran." I said, "Oh, can I come?" Just like you thought anyone could come. And they said, "Oh," he says, "Well, we need a goalkeeper." I says, "Yeah, I'm a goalkeeper." So I had to go and borrow gloves. So I blagged it from day one on the in the Glentoran's youth team by going and borrowing gloves. But I must have been okay to sign me.
Right on.
Well, I never played at the level that you two did right over here. But I am going to throw myself into this thing here. So my first club, Peter, if you care, was a club called Lara, and it was in the second division of Venezuela in the Venezuelan league over there.
Lara, like the car.
Yeah, Lara. So
Lara.
in the Estadio de Lara, and I was in the U20, or what you would call the reserve team for that club right over there. And that was, I've got so many stories from that experience. It was just very eye-opening in regards to what the world of South American football is. It's a very different game.
But I think when you talk about levels, you just said, "Oh, we haven't played at the level," or "I haven't played at the level you guys." I would say the same. I haven't played at the level Saskia's played at. I would, and there's so many of us would say that when you're talking to another goalkeeper or goalkeeping coach who played. But for me, the important thing and the most important advice for young goalkeepers is go and play games.
Yeah, you played.
Yeah.
Don't get hung up on the level. You will find your level.
Absolutely.
Just go and play.
Look.
Who was the goalkeeper we were talking about that went to Northern Ireland trained?
That went to Northern Ireland to train?
Well, we were talking about it a couple of segments ago.
He was talking about Bobby Edwards. It was Eric Klinovsky,
right.
And Eric, who's at Toronto now, he was talking about Bobby Edwards nobody was giving him the time of day here in the U.S.
Him a chance.
And he wanted to play, so he went over there and he made a name for himself.
Well, the thing about Bobby was, again, I was across doing some work in New Jersey, and the name kept popping up in conversations.
Jersey.
There must be something in the water with Jersey keepers because they're everywhere at the minute.
Jersey girl.
But his name kept popping up, and so I looked at the highlight reel, and the first time I watched it, I was like, my God, this kid is something different. I actually sent it straight away to 4 or 5 pro clubs who were immediately interested. So I spoke to Bobby, and I got a little his backstory of where he came from, where he thought he was in the game, where he thought he could go. He's very, very ambitious. Kind of thought that he had missed his chance. Kind of thought that he had been continuously overlooked.
Yeah.
And wanted to maybe travel around a little bit. Take that side of life a little bit more seriously. Travel around. If he played some football well, he'd done it great. Kind of find himself again. And I said, well, why don't you, if you're ever in Ireland or ever in Northern Ireland, come in, train every day with the boys. There's been no shortage of takers in terms of clubs. And he did that. It was a pure blind leap of faith on his part, because he didn't know anything about the country. anything about the level. He just wanted to play.
Yeah.
As soon as he heard that you will play, he booked his ticket pretty much.
Yeah, I think that goes to your point, like talking about levels. Don't get hung up in that stuff. Don't, go and play. And you never know what'll happen. I mean, look at Bobby. Look where he is now.
I mean, look, the opportunities that came to me to going to overseas. First off, it made my game not just as a player, but as a person as well too. In a cultural experience was I got opportunities I never would have gotten if I hadn't gone down to South America. I never would have gotten in that U20 national pool if I hadn't gone to South America. Those opportunities never would have come to me if I had stayed in the United States in my bubble. Where I wasn't getting a chance for whatever reasons, whether it was my size or whether I just wasn't good enough. Probably I wasn't good enough. But it really helped develop me. And I feel when I came back and tried to play in the USL here in the United States, it was I was a much better keeper for that experience. I want to talk about this. Getting back to the topic of today, the large group of goalkeepers. I want to do a couple stories here from you guys here. I want to talk about a story you guys have, and maybe we'll start with either Saskia or Michael, whoever wants to start. The first time you worked with a large group of goalkeepers and how you handled it, because I definitely have a deer in the headlights story in regards to that.
Saskia, ladies first.
I'm like, I have to really think about that one. I don't think I was ever, I think even when I went over to camp in Holland and stuff, and just whether it was summer camp, whatever, I don't think anything like that ever bothered me or intimidated me. I was just always just kind of focused on what I was doing. I never got kind of bogged down in what other goalkeepers were doing and how they were playing and how they weren't playing. So I don't ever recall being like a deer in headlights. I was just focused.
Yeah, that's probably why you won a World Cup.
Sometimes I have answers that make me sound like an alien or something. I'm like, it didn't bother me. Sorry.
You're like, I don't know why everyone thinks playing, like telling the UCLA keepers, like, I don't know why you guys think Division I soccer is so hard. I mean, all you have to do is like be a Herman Trophy finalist. It's not that hard.
Well, my one was my very first session with the Federation goalkeepers. U14, I think they were, and there were 6 goalkeepers. So ultra prepared, all the session plans done over and over, set up early. So we got up to the pitch, and the guys were just volleying balls at each other, just having a little feel of the ball. And I picked up one of the balls and volleyed it and said, "Yes, Paul." I didn't realize that Paul had turned around to take a drink. While the ball was traveling, then heard his name being called, turns around, ball hits him square in the nose, blood everywhere. And I'm thinking, I remember looking at my watch and thinking, I actually officially start work in 5 minutes in my first job of the Federation, and I'm going to be sacked before I even start. And that was just I can't even remember how the session went. Completely gone. My head was gone. All I could think about was, I've just broke a kid's nose in my very first goalkeeping session here. But no, it was fine. It was all good.
Oh my gosh! Wow. Geez. Okay. So I don't know if I can beat that story. This is tough here. All right. I will say this one was absolutely a very difficult. I'll give two very difficult for me. One was the first time I was on regional staff for Olympic development. And I got obviously that was a big deal to me as a young goalkeeper coach to be brought in for the regional staff. I got brought in there. There was some very high level goalkeeper coaches I was working with there too, who had worked with national team keepers and MLS keepers and all that sort of thing. And first session, the guy who I was working with, he goes, all right, well, you're going to run that session. I'm like, cool. So I put a session together for a small group of goalkeepers. And literally, I didn't understand that we were going to have every goalkeeper from every state in this session. So I panicked because I'd only put out so many cones. And I basically going, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do here. So I started manipulating those players into these weird cone activities. and trying to make it seem very confident and like I knew exactly what I was trying to do in that situation, and being like, no, so this is based on that movement and this movement and that whatever. And after the session was over, I thought it was a complete disaster. The goalkeeper coach comes up to me. He's like, hey man, I really like that footwork session that you put together. That was really high level. And I was like, oh my gosh, wow, I'm glad that worked out, because I just literally thought of it on the spot, came up with it on the spot.
See, I thought the question was when we were keepers.
Oh, that's okay.
Your coaches.
If you want to do a coach's one, feel free.
No, I got fired off the jugs machine at Soccer Plus because I broke 3 kids' wrists because it turned it up too hot. So Tony never let me use the jugs machine again because they were like, turn it up, and I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh, that that's one right there. Well, before we go, Michael, and thanks for taking all the time with us here. First off, it's been
my pleasure.
Pretty darn informative.
Absolutely.
I want to ask you, what is it about Northern Ireland and that NIFL league that makes it such a great stepping stone league for goalkeepers that want to take their game to that next level?
I think I always describe it as real football. You know, it doesn't have the glitz and glamour of the English Premier League, and listen, there's some really decent stadiums, but even when you compare it to the MLS and all these new franchises, new stadiums, and all the bright lights, it's couldn't be further away from that. You know, if you tried. But I think, as I say, it's real football. It's back to football as we remembered it. You know, I just think it's an experience. You're playing against people who need to win to pay their mortgage, need to win to feed their kids. The competition levels are through the roof, and it's the environment, and the word I'm looking for is just the community, you know, of Irish League football is just something completely different. Bobby was a massive example of that when he came in, and he really embraced it, and he was adored by not only the people who followed his club, but by so many other people in Irish League football. He just loved everything about it, and he just took it on board. It gave him the opportunity, and he felt that he should always give something back. And I always say that he's the biggest advocate of, if you want to have like a tourism poster, you should have Bobby Edwards, or, you know, the thing, because he just always talked about how good Northern Ireland was and how impressive it was and how much he loved it. But yeah, getting back to the football, I just think it's real, and it just makes you grow up, and it makes you want to be more competitive, want to be better every day, and ultimately you want to be a winner.
I love that.
I love that. I feel like that should be like the brochure for the NIFL. Like
they did have one before, and they'd done these big advertising boards, and it was like no prawn sandwiches and none of this, and no fancy dams and all this here, and they put you know, the players at that time on huge billboards, you know, around bus stations and in the city centre and things like that. So it was pretty popular when it happened. But that's it. That's just Irish League football in a nutshell. Just normal working class people who want to play football and who have been given that opportunity.
Wow. I mean, I don't know what else to say, because like that sounds like such a really real way of explaining the experience, as opposed to trying to sugarcoat it and say like, well, it's because we plan on being, you know, in a few years, like one of the top blah 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 leagues in the world or whatever. Like you broke it down from a real guttural, you know, from a lack of a better term, you know, player perspective on like what you're going to get out of the experience of coming here. That's awesome, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So honestly, we've been going for over an hour, and Michael, thank you for taking the time.
And we'll build some character playing there. Maybe.
Yeah, you'll have some chutzpah, as my grandma would say.
You'll be humble. You know, you're
there.
Yeah,
I'll tell you a really quick story about, and this sums up Irish League football. I was a really young kid, had been sent out on loan by Glentoran, their local club, and this club in particular, my father had played for them and was captain. His father had played for them and was one of the founders and captains. So there was a real family heritage and history of this club, and I came to the club on loan as a young goalkeeper with a huge sort of, you know, aura around him, and everyone was expecting great things. And on my debut, we got beat 4-0 or 5-0 by the local rivals at that time. And I remember the week after, we were traveling to an away game, and it was also one of my first experiences of getting paid. In those days, you would have been given your wages in a brown envelope with your name on it, cash. So traveling to the game the next week, and again in those days, you had some of the directors on the bus, some supporters on the bus with the players, in fact. And I was approached halfway up the bus by a guy with a pretty serious reputation in Belfast who handed me a brown envelope and patted me on the back. I thought it was my wages from the week before. Opened it up. It was a Joker playing card, and continued to harass me for 10 minutes of how I was the worst goalkeeper the club had ever had. How I was never as good as my father, who wasn't a goalkeeper, never as good as my grandfather. It was a mistake signing me. Absolute, you know, all the expletives you can imagine. And this, I think it was 17 maybe. And this is on the way to a game. And at the end of that season, we're very successful. We won 2 trophies. I won Player of the Year, Players Player of the Year, and Club Player of the Year. And couldn't wait to hand back the Joker card at the end. But it was just little things like that. That's just summing up Irish League football. That was his way of telling me, you know, that yeah, this is real life. You know, you're not a kid anymore. Grow up.
Wow, you can't just show up and expect to be great. Like, come on.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I feel like a lot of kids in the United States could benefit from going to Northern Ireland. Let's just say there's a little bit of a level of entitlement to some of the kids in the United States. A little bit, even at the elite clubs.
It's the same everywhere.
Yeah.
Well, Michael, first off, thanks for taking all this time. Before we go, if anybody out there wants to know more about NIGK, or, they want to reach out to you about potentially, coming out to their club and putting a little thing together, where's the best place for them to reach out?
Well, they can drop me a DM on Instagram or Twitter. Again, if it's through you guys, I'd love to come back on at a later date, and we'll do something different. But as I said before, it's all about learning. I want to travel across to the States again, Canada again, other parts of the world, and learn off not only coaches but goalkeepers as well. But any coach or young goalkeeper who's interested in finding out more, as I say, I'm very, very open. Just drop me a DM, ask as many questions as you want, and we'll do our very, very best to give you the answers you need.
Right on.
Awesome. And let's try to figure out a way to get over to Northern Ireland. I've never been. I want to go.
I'm down.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to somebody handing me a Joker card in an envelope and being like, "You're the worst goalkeeper coach we've ever had here."
Or the glove slaps.
Yeah, the glove slaps.
Or the glove slaps. Yeah, that's going to go viral. That's going to go viral. Remember, guys, contact at InsideThe18media.com if you have a guest suggestion or a topic suggestion. Or during this lockdown, guys, if you want to reach out and you've got something that you'd like to talk about on the show, I mean, we've got the time. And if you've got something of benefit, again, like Michael was bringing up, the fact is like, I was, self-deprecating myself in regards to the level that I played compared to these two right here. But don't ever think, because we've had people reach out before and go like, I don't know if I'm big enough to be on the show, or yada yada. It's not about that. It's about us learning and growing from each other. So if you have something that you feel is going to benefit the audience, reach out. Let us know, because it might work. We just recently had a mother on. Today we did an interview with the mother of a goalkeeper named Nathan, who went viral with his little solo training session on Twitter. So
Sarah Jane,
yeah, he killed it out there, and that was absolutely fantastic with her. She was bringing something to the table that we can't as goalkeeper coaches, and that's the parents' perspective and how to benefit your kid during this time period. So I thought that was really a cool piece, and it was fantastic. So do that, and guys, remember, it's at Goalkeeper Podcast on all social media platforms, or at Goalkeeper Pod on Twitter, because podcast is too long for Twitter, which is unfortunate. But that's all the time on Inside the 18. If you want to reach out to Saskia Weber, I think she checks her social media now. I think now that she's got the time to do it. At Saskia_Weber.
Yeah, it's Saskia_Weber.
Out there. She's easy. All right, guys. That's all the time on Inside the 18, and we are out. Later, guys. All right.
Michael and Michael.
Michael, thank you so much for doing that, man. That was
no, my pleasure.
Right on.
Yeah, that was that was awesome. All right, I really have to use the bathroom. I've had to use the bathroom for like the last hour. So I'm gonna get going.
We'll see you again, hopefully soon.
Yeah, man. Let's seriously talk about putting something together in Northern Ireland, because I think it would be really, really cool to do something like that, because you've got the setup, you've got the facilities and stuff, and I think it'd be beneficial to the kids. So
no, listen, it would be my pleasure to have all you guys across anytime.
Yeah.
Or again, if next time I'm out in the States, we'll arrange to hook up in some shape or form. But in the meantime, we'll stay in touch. Anything you need, feel free to give me a shout. There's no problem.
If any of your female goalkeepers want to chat with a female goalkeeper, give me a call.
Hold on. I've ended the recording, Saskia, so you can say whatever you want now.
No,
so.
like I said, if